Hello ladies, it's May Larson here, and I just wanted to do a quick tutorial on the junk journal that I have designed. And this junk journal has something very special that I think is going to make your life easier when you're creating your junk journals and adding your signatures. Now, the reason that it's going to make your life a lot easier is that typically when you're doing junk journals, you have to make the holes for your junk journals along the spine of your junk journal. And a junk journal typically is made out of all kinds of recycled or upcycled scraps of, old cereal boxes or old cracker boxes, things that you have around your house. Not always do we want, me particularly, I don't want to do that. It's a great way to recycle, but I don't think I want to go through my kitchen cabinets to take the cereal boxes to create a journal with, and not to mention I wanted something that's going to be a lot more sturdier. So I've come up with this design that will make your life, or I think will make your life a lot easier, especially when you're adding your signatures. The journal, this particular one here, is 5 by 6, and it has 3 signatures. As you can see, there is enough here to add your 3 signatures. And to create this journal, it's going to be very simple. You're going to need, of course, your ruler, a craft knife, a piercing tool, your distress inks, and a little template that you're going to use to pierce your center holes, your scoreboard, your cutting paper, your designer paper, any doilies, coffee. Now, when I'm doing any type of vintage distressing with coffee, what I like to do is add some vanilla extract, because this coffee, when you're staining with coffee, it has that really strong smell to coffee, and I love coffee, but I don't particularly like the smell of it. So I've come up with a way that you can just take some vanilla extract and it just gives it a really nice smell to it. So that's just something that you might want to try to get that smell from the coffee out. And you're also going to need some wax, thread, or twine. I like to use this one here. It's got wax. It's almost like a burlap. You're also going to need a eye needle that is big enough to go through your signature holes. And you're going to need some score tape, and of course your designer papers. I recommend that you get some little small clamps or clips to hold all your signatures down, and also some of this double adhesive tape to help tape down some of your doilies. I've used for this collection the Authentique Closeout, I think it's called, or Classic One, sorry, Classic One. And it's a beautiful collection. And I've also used some, I tore up some pages from an old book that I had coffee dyed, and I used that. And I also use some ledger sheets that I've coffee dyed and attached it to here. So those are my 3 signatures that I have selected, and let's get this party started. So I'm going to bring out my little We Are Memory Keeper mat, which is really good for piercing your paper. And you're also going to need some type of a ruler as well. I don't know if I mentioned that. So your journal has these little score marks in there, and you can just carefully bend them, and you have your spine just like that. Now, what I recommend that you do is that you take a piece of craft paper. You also can purchase one of these. It is a double rugged textured Craftex craft paper fabric, and you can purchase this on a tip that was given to me by Monica Baker. I have not yet tried. I highly suggest that you give it a try. All right, so I have a piece of craft cardstock, and I love this cardstock because it's very thick and durable. And this particular piece here measures, oops, backwards. It measures 2.5 inches wide by 6 inches. And my journal here is 5 by 6, okay? So once you have your 2.5 by 6 piece of craft paper cut, you're going to bring out your scoreboard. And you're going to take it and you're going to score it straight down the middle, and that helps you to decide where exactly, let me zoom in, where exactly you're going to start puncturing those holes. So I have scored it down at 1 1/4, straight down the middle. I've also scored it down at 3/8 of an inch and at 2 1/8 of an inch down, okay? I'm going to continue to use this piece for, I'm going to use it as a template and a guide to puncture or pierce my paper for my signatures, but I'm also going to use it for the spine. So don't toss this aside once you've used it to mark where you're going to pierce your signatures. You're also going to use this for your spine, the inside of your spine, okay? So I think the hardest thing that when you're selecting or making a junk journal is selecting or making some groupings of what it is that you want to put into this journal. I strongly recommend it. Maybe, I know there's a lot of junk journal digital images. Those are wonderful. You have to keep a couple things in mind. One is the printing, the cost of printing. Now there is some awesome printers out there that are very affordable and assist you with more printing accessibility. However, if you don't have those printers, it can be very cost effective. So another thing that you can do is, if you don't have access to a printer, which is the biggest thing that I hear a lot from a lot of people, is that you can use your scrap cardstocks or designer papers that you have laying around from some previous projects that you may have used once or twice. So what I would suggest you do is you just collect and combine them how you want them. Now this here, I'm going to remove the clip. Now this here is, like I said, the classic one from Authentique, and I just kind of grouped it how I wanted it, and I put them together with my clip. Now let's talk about the grouping again a little bit further. So on here you see I took a doily that I had coffee/vanilla extract dyed, and I heat set it. Another great way of getting a really nice vintage crisp look is taking an iron once it's a little bit wet and just kind of getting it to dry up your paper, or maybe putting it in the oven. It'll give it a nice burnt crisp. That's if you want that kind of appearance. I didn't want it to look too vintagey, but I did want something that gave it an old feel to it. I used my double-sided tape to glue down my little doily. I folded it halfway. Now I also have another doily here, and one of my book pages I tore up from one of my books, and again I adhered it with some of that double-sided tape. And you can also, if you don't have this, you can use painter's tape as well, if you have some of that, to tape that down. Okay, so I used a little ledger. Again, it's been coffee dyed. Make sure all your pages are facing the right direction. See, like right here, I just see that this one is not particularly going like it should. So maybe I needed to flip this like that. So there we go. Now we have it right. So make sure everything's going in the right direction. Now my pages are 6 inches wide by 9.5 inches. 6 inches long by 9.5 wide. and you're going to score it at 4 3/4. So basically you're just going to take your paper and you're going to run it through, bring your scoreboard, and you're going to score it at 9 3/4 down on each of your pages, okay? And you're going to do that for all your signatures. Now, every book, just keep in mind that I'm going to have several signature journals, and everyone's going to be different, so it's always important that you measure everything accordingly. All right, so then once you have your grouping, you want to clip it or clamp it, just like that. Okay, now this one I've already have it pierced, and I'm going to go on to move to the other ones to show you how I pierce that. Okay, so here I have all my groupings. This is signature number 2, and basically signatures are just a grouping of what you're going to put together in your journal. Again, I'm going to make sure that everything is facing in the right direction. I put a double-sided tape down, or you can use painter's tape, and I go through, make sure everything is the way I want it. Now let me pull this one aside, because this one I used a craft sheet of paper, and this one is 9 3/4 by 6 inches. I scored it down at 1 1/2, scored it again at 4 inches, and then again at 7 3/4 I scored. So 1 1/2, 4 1/4, sorry, 4 1/4, and 7 3/4 is where you're going to score it. Once you have that, you're going to take your bone folder. It is a thicker. If it's thicker, make sure you burnish that really, really well. Burnish it, and burnish this side as well. Okay, and then this is my center fold right there, and you're going to burnish that also. So your pocket or your fold out is going to look like that. Okay, so that is going to go on this one here, just like that, and it measures just like that. Okay, so we're going to tuck that in there. Now I have everything in the way I want it, right? And let's pull my little self-healing mat. And what I suggest is that you take and make sure that everything is how you want it. Everything's flushed. Clip it on each end. We have that tape down, so don't worry about that. That's why we have those tapes. And let's do the same thing on the other side. Let's make sure that's all perfectly aligned. Okay. Now you have it like that. Here's the crease where I scored it at 4 3/4. I'm going to take my little template here, and I'm going to see that, flush it against the crease with crease, put it down. If you want, you can add some of that double-sided tape so that you're not moving anything around. Take your piercing tool and just pierce in there. Once you have the little marks, you can pull it out, and then you can go in here and my little tapes. I think I prefer the painter's tape than that one. Okay. So then you can turn it around and just go ahead and pierce it all the way through. And this is where you're going to start adding your twine or your wax thread. So there's that. See that? Set it aside and grab your next one. Again, the paper length for this particular journal is 9 1/2 inches by 6. I scored it down at 4 3/4. Make sure you tape down your sides. line it all up, clamp it down, just like so. Extra clamps on that one. Clamp each side to make it flushed and all perfectly aligned. Okay, this one here might move a little bit because of that tape. It's not the best tape, but try. I didn't feel like going downstairs to get painter's tape. Painter's tape. I keep saying the wrong thing. Anyway, so flip it around. Use your little template that you're also going to use for your, and then just kind of make sure you get it there right flushed in the center. Hold it right there. Use your piercing tool. And mine's just seen its better days. I think I've had this for the last 5-6 years now. Okay. All right. Move your template. Lift up. So you put that in there. And carefully pierce through. Okay. And there we go. All right. So now we have that on, entirely pierced, and we're going to save that because we're going to use that for our spine. Okay. So then the next thing you're going to do is you're going to grab, I use about probably, I don't know, 2 yards. I never actually measure this, but I would say about 2 yards just to do your signatures. I used, I'm going to run this through. So I might use this one for about 2 signatures. I don't know. We'll see it because I run it through twice, and then I'll run it through the spine again. But you're definitely going to use about total of 5 yards, maybe, guesstimating. I've never actually measured it. Maybe I should one of these days. Okay, I always start on the outside of, this is where it folds and it bends in. I always start on the outside. Why do I do that? Because I want the knots to be here, because this is going to go against my spine and all those knots, and where I tied is not going to be seen. Now, pierce it through. Just like so. Pull it to the inside of the book. Now, another thing you can do, because you have this tail, and I do not make a knot or anything, leave it loose. Hold it down like this, or take some painter's tape, tape it down. Just make sure you don't get it too stuck on your pages. Okay, go back in to the next hole, out to the outside. And make sure that this part here, you're doing it really tight. You don't want this to be really loose. Again, go down to the next one and go in through the inside. And that from the inside out. Oh, I didn't even pierce that one. Oh, my paper shifted here. And that's where I think I prefer my painter's tape. There we go. All right. Now you're here. You finished completely through. You have 2 stitches. Now run it back through. And that way you'll get a tighter stitch. And another thing you can do, you can take your, if it's not too thick and you don't mind using an old sewing machine, run a stitch straight down that center line. That helps keep everything intact as well. Go back in, pull it tight. You don't want to pull it too tight where you're going to tear your pages, but you want to pull it tight enough. All right. Okay, now snip it. I have my little snipping scissors. I don't know what I've done with them. Snip it. And you have these 2 tails back to the front, or the outside of the journal signature. Hold it in place tight. Make a knot. I make about 2 knots just to make sure. You don't, again, you don't want to pull too tight, because the last thing you want to do is to break a tear into your signature pages. Okay, we'll do another knot, and then trim these off, and then we'll do another one, and I will do the other one off air. Again, let's do this again. Let's open up our pages just like so. Start from the outside and work your way in. This is the spine that's going against this. Pull it in. This is the inside covers. Hold that tail. Go into the second hole. Out to the outside. Go to the third hole. Into the inside. Pull it. Again, third hole or fourth hole, sorry. Pull it tight, go back to the second hole, and in to the third, and you're going to trim once you come back through, and you'll have this tail and this one here, and those two are going to tie together. And I'm sure there's tons and tons of YouTube tutorials with so many stitching techniques and signature, how to sew your signature pages down. This is just how I do it. Feel free to look at other tutorials to get ideas of how to do some of these binding of the pages and your signatures, okay? Snip. And set that one aside, and we're going to go ahead and clip it just for now. Last but not least, again, we're going to make sure everything is in the right direction. Nothing is facing down. Perfect. Okay. And we're going to go in on the outside. These things move on you. The only thing I don't like about this tape that I selected from my desk. Okay. Pull it through. Get your tail, pinch it. Second hole to the inside. Get the right. I had to switch things around here. Through here and through here and cut. That's the last and final signature that we've sewn. And again, you can run this down straight down the middle of your sewing machine, and you can sew a stitch down the center if you want. It's entirely up to you. I'm not doing that today, okay? And another thing that you can do to give it character is you can sew your pages around the edges, and it just gives it really nice. But you want to do that, for instance, now that I have it like this, kind of hard, you want to do that before you tie your signatures, okay? Now, another thing that you can do is you can distress your pages a little bit more, and I just use my Tim Holtz ruler, or scissors, sorry, not ruler, and you can just kind of distress, distress, distress. it's a junk journal. It doesn't have to be perfectly done. Okay. Make sure you move your clips and your clamps before you do this part. And if your pages are overlapping, you can trim them down just a little bit, because sometimes what happens is that your inside pages will stick out a little, and you can cut down that just a tad bit. See, basically like right here, it's a little bit overlapping. You can trim that with your X-Acto knife. Or you can do what I'm doing, which is take your scissors and just stress it, and it's going to wear that down just a tad bit where it's overlapping or popping out. Okay. Then once you have that done, let's get something to wipe this up. You're going to take your Distress ink, and I just go straight from my Distress ink. And you can distress your pages like so. If you miss a page, just go open it up and get in there really good. There's a nice vintage charm. I like it because it gives it almost like a burnt edge to it. And really gives it character. Okay. All right. And while you're doing all this, you can start thinking about some embellishments and things that you want to add to your journal. I'm just doing a basic tutorial. I will probably post a finished flip through of what it looks like. I will not do the whole decor part of it, just to save you guys some of the grief of watching me decorate this here. Okay, so now we have all our journals sewn up, and we can start focusing on this part of our journal. Now, bring back that little template that we made, and let's get our score tape. Now, you have your little score marks where you scored it down at 3/8 of an inch, and then again at 2 1/8, I believe it was. And you're going to take and put score tape right on the edge of that piece. Just like so. And you're going to go in the inside, but not on the score mark, okay? You want to make sure you leave that little room for it to somewhat breathe if you want to get back in here. And I don't want to put it on where my piercings are. You want to make sure you burnish this down as well. Okay, again on the edge, and tear it up and burnish your piece. Okay, so then you have this, and you can go in here and trim some of this little bit of score tape, and that is going to go straight down here. Now, if you notice that we have our center holes punched out, that's fine. This is going to go right along. You see those little, where it meets the folds? We're going to flush that right on there, because we marked it enough to fit right snug in there. See that? right in there, just like that. Okay, now one thing I do want to do is I do want to put like a bead of glue right down here, because this will tend to somewhat lift up just a tad bit when you fold it. So just put a bead of glue, and I use a fine tip, but the glue that I use is Scotch Quick Dry. Okay, so again, if you're having problems as to decide where to put that, go ahead, open up your book just like that. Remove the backing off your score tape. And this is a little tricky, I know. Do not remove it on the 3/8 of an inch marks. These two here, leave them like that. You don't want to do those. And then okay, you see that? Now if you get a little bit of glue seeping out, that is okay. Grab your baby wipe and wipe it down just a tad bit. Make sure you put it down at the bottom. So we recycled that piece that we used to use for our template. Okay, burnish that really, really good. And if you want, see I have a little seepage there, take your little clamps and clamp that down to get that to glue down. Just good. Okay, just like that. Now let's remove this here. Remove the score tape. And on the other side. Okay, burnish it. There we go. Do not decorate the outside of your journal until we have all your signatures in, okay? Now, we have that clamp down, and I'm just trying to make sure that Scotch Quick Dry dries. That's one of the things I like a lot about it, is that it does dry fairly quick, and I don't have to worry too much about it. Now, go ahead, grab your piercing tool just for the sake of it, and see it does match up with the center line. Just pierce it through. Just like so. Oh, I want a puncher. There we go. Just pierce those in. Okay. If you pierced in the wrong, like I was about to pierce in the wrong, it's okay. It's going to be covered anyway. No one's going to see it. Secret, right? All right. And you can probably lay this right on your piercing mat, and there you go. And you won't have to worry about boo-boos or anything like that. Okay, so we have that. Go ahead, grab your signature, and make sure you have plenty of thread. I used about 2 yards. I'm going to guess another 2 yards. So, again, I guess. Okay. Again, make sure you leave a good tail. Do not tie the end. Now this is how my album goes. My signature goes in the inside, and then decide which one do you want for your front and which ones do you want for your back. And make sure they're all going in the right direction. And I think we're going to use this one as the first grouping. Okay. Bring this here, open it to the last page, and again flip it on the outside, and we're going to start from the outside in. I'm going to go ahead and remove these. Start with your first hole, pull it all the way through. I think I've cut more than 2 yards for sure. And then start here. I might have been off camera, so I do apologize for that. Okay. There we go. And then run it to the second hole again. And this part, you might need a little bit of assistance here. It's always good to have some octopus hand, but we don't have those, right? I'm always teasing about the octopus hands. Okay. And sometimes it's easier to use big thread, especially if you're using wax thread. You don't want to use something that's long and dangling, just because, and you want to make sure that's really tight and secure. It'll get tangled, and you don't want it to get tangled. Go in here, go back in there. If you're kind of fidgeting about your fingers and your hands, go ahead and tape that down with some painter's tape, the blue one, or masking tape, whichever you find. I think we all have a hubby that has one of those in their toolbox, right? There we go. And make sure it's tight. Go back in here, back to that hole in the inside. And then that hole. Oh, where are you, hole? Shifted on me. And snip it right here and tie it. Again, no one's going to see this part of your journal because it's going to be covered with whatever you choose to cover it with. Okay? We're going to do the next one, and then I will do the one off camera. I will tie a couple knots here and snip it. So that's that signature. Now we're going to move on to the next one. And make sure everything's going in the right direction. Align it well. Start in the spine area. Go in. And if it makes it easier, you can pin these up. Since you know you finished this one signature, you can pin that down or clamp it down. Like that, okay? That way it's not getting in your way. And again, get your painter's tape, hold that tail. If you're having a problem, like sometimes I have my dexterity problems with my hands. Kind of get used to it after a while. Okay. Pull. There we go. Run it back. Once you get it going, it's a lot easier. Trust me, it's a lot easier than trying to figure out where to position your signatures, because that is, to me, it's really hard to try to figure out where you're going to position your signatures. So this journal makes it a lot easier for you. It takes out the guesswork for you. Okay. So that was a knot. Knot it up. Do a couple knots. have really bad grips on my hands. Okay. And so I'm going to do the other one.